Good morning or afternoon. We're ready for 12.6 in our math. We're going to be talking about the coordinate system that we were talking about yesterday, but we're going to use it to actually make a line graph, another kind of graph. Now, it's time to consider our exploration of data, what we've been doing, just taking data, statistics, stats, and doing something with them. Now, specifically organizing it. Now, consider the following high temperatures in Celsius for Moscow for the week of October 5th, 2014, according to weather.com. So, they've listed all their information, their dates, the high temperatures, remember this is Celsius, listed those. Okay, so now they've got their information. So, what graph could you use to graph that? You can't graph it on a pie graph because remember a pie graph it represents a whole number and the pieces of that number. So this doesn't represent that. So you can't use a pie graph on that. You could use a line graph, a bar graph if you wanted to, but a line graph will help us see the pattern of growth or the pattern of the data. So now to draw the line graph, right down at the very bottom of this page, it's going to show you how you would set this up. Okay, this would be on graph paper. This is like way zoomed in. Okay, so to draw the line graph, we're going to use coordinates. So we're going to start by setting up a coordinate system using the dates in one direction, the degrees in the other. To make the graph more compact, we'll go ahead and make each box represent 4 degrees. Okay, so I'm not sure why they came up with 4 degrees, but that's what they wanted to do. So for whatever reason, okay, so notice it has a title, High Temperatures for Moscow, week of October 5th, 2014. Okay, they put their information. Now, notice where it says degrees Celsius, okay? So they just wrote what that is. Now, they could have put the little degrees and the C beside it, but just to save room, they just put the numbers and then wrote degrees Celsius up the top. And notice that each section, the scale, each section represents 4 degrees. And then each vertical line represents a date. October 5th, October 6th, October 7th, October 8th. So each one of those represents one day. Now, turn the page and let's see how they graph this. You can plot the individual dates and temperatures as coordinates on the graph. So we'll show that we had a 5-degree day on October 5th by putting a point at the intersection of 5 degrees and October 5th. Now, since we made each box represent 4 degrees, our point will be just a little above the 4-degree marker. Next, we'll put a point at the intersection of October 6th and 7th, since it was 7 degrees on the 6th. Continuing this way is how they chart it. Notice how they've charted that. And they used a little tiny, box rather than a dot. And they've made this little key over here, and they've given it kind of a light gray color. You'll understand why they did that in just a second. So they've just charted everything as best they could. Okay, but we're not quite finished. Now you're going to connect the points together with straight lines. You'd want to use a ruler if you were doing this. The lines will help you see the trend. In this case, the temperatures have generally risen. You can see that. I really like line graphs. To me, they're really easy to tell. Now you have a line graph. So if we wanted to compare both the highs and the lows for the same week, in other words, you could compare more sets of data on the same graph. You could easily do that by just adding another line to the graph. Thus, the reason why they used little boxes with colors and they have a little key to show you what that means. Now, look at the next page. Here's where they're going to add in more data to the same graph. The same lows for that week. So they've put the same dates and they put their lows in Celsius. Okay, so then they went through and they graphed it. But the thing is, this time they had to extend their coordinate system down to include negative numbers because up in their box, notice on October 8th, they had a negative number. So they had to change that. They had to see where 0 is. That's where their main line was. And then they went 4 down, which would be -4. So they had to do that so that they could graph that. Notice how they changed the little color of the box and they added it over here to their key. So So you can easily just look at it and go, oh, okay, well, yeah, I see how that, worked. Now, sometimes computer-generated line graphs won't show the actual points. Since the purpose of graphing is simplicity, they can get distracted. So below is a line graph with the points removed. So notice that at the very bottom. It's the same line graph, they just removed the little points. A lot of times that's the way you'll see it, especially if it's computer generated. All right, look at the next page. This talks to us about using the line graph. So when should you use a line graph? Now consider these helpful summaries of the graphs from a couple of government agencies. Hope we can believe this. I'm just teasing. Line graphs are used to track changes over short and long periods of time. When smaller changes exist, line graphs are better to use than bar graphs. Line graphs can also be used to compare changes over the same period of time for more than one group. That's the National Center for Educational Statistics. A line graph displays the relationship between two types of information, such as number and school personnel trained by year. They are useful in illustrating trends over time. That's the Department of Health and Human Services and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So in short, line graphs are very useful in showing trends and small changes in data, or comparing more than one thing. Bar graphs help us compare data when we're looking at large differences. A line graph really makes the small differences and patterns come to life. So if you just remember that pie graphs are used for a whole, representing a whole of something, and then parts of the whole. Bar graphs generally are used when you have lots of information, big numbers of information. And then line graphs can show more detail, more fine detail of smaller things. Okay, so you're going to do work text 12.6, I believe. Yes, 12.6. You will be able to use the calculator on, and this is 3 pages long. You will be able to use your calculator on number 3. Okay, we're just going to be using line graphs. So I'm not going to go over it with you. It should be super duper duper easy. Just going to be plotting, and then you have some skill sharpening at the bottom of page 187. Okay, if you need any help, let me know, or you can look back in your book. But these are pretty easy, and I'll bet you've done this before. So anyway, let me know if you need help, and I'll be happy to help.